In this video, we will be tasting and talking about batch 102 of the EcoCha Tea Club, a high mountain Hong Oolong tea from Taiwan. Batch 102 of the EcoCha Tea Club is a high mountain Hong Oolong tea from Taiwan. Specifically the Shan high mountain tea growing region just behind our town where we live in Bamboo Mountain. There's a famous tea garden called the Bagua Taiyuan. Bagua means the 8 trigrams. It's a tool used in Taoism for prophecy, basically, telling the future, feng shui, all kinds of philosophical significance in the 8 trigram construct. It has a lot to do with the I Ching, deep Taoism stuff. Not what we're here for. We're here for tea, and that's just a kind of a tourist destination slash landmark in the Jushan Bamboo Mountain mountainous recreational areas that lead up to the Shanxi high mountain tea growing region. And we recently started cooperating with a friend we met at least a few years ago, several years ago, I think. I went to a seminar, gave a presentation in northern Taiwan, and met this farmer who lives in Yuchi, which is the Sun Moon Lake tea growing region, where most of, or at least the bulk of Taiwan's specialty black tea is produced. And got a good vibe from him then when we met in this seminar, and made contact with him a few times since. And finally, we're going to start sourcing our red jade black tea from him because he specializes in that, along with a couple of other strains of tea that he makes into black tea. As we were talking in recent months, he said that he cooperates with his wife's family, who is from Lugu, just below Shanxi, who has an old tea garden, old meaning 30 plus years old, in a remote area near the Bagua Taiyuan, this landmark, that's difficult to get to, and basically they're not really working it in terms of trying to get the most yield out of it, and they harvest spring and winter to make high mountain oolong tea, which is what most people do around here. And he ask them to harvest the in-between crop. Basically, they do nothing with the farm to maintain it, no administration of fertilizers or pesticides between spring and winter. So he gets this bug-bitten style tea. The garden is just allowed to do what it does for 6 months, probably between spring and winter. And before they get ready to prepare the garden for the winter crop, he gets that harvest. And he asks his in-laws, basically the Lugu tea farmers, to process it like a heavily oxidized oolong. And then he freezes it until he has the time on his off season. He's quite busy in terms of working. He processes other people's tea in his area. But basically he just waits until he's ready to make this batch of Hong Oolong. The oolong tea farmers do the first half of it up to the saching, or the cease oxidation tumble heating phase, and then it's frozen at half production, basically. So a good amount, makes you probably 30-40% moisture in the leaves, because especially with Hong Oolong, basically, let me back up a couple of minutes, or at least a few steps. Hong Oolong, the name, Hong means red, and Oolong is oolong, meaning a partially oxidized tea. It's a hybrid. Hong cha in Chinese is what we call black tea in English, a fully oxidized tea, English tea, all of the black tea in the world. But Chinese black tea is called Hong cha, not black, but red. So the name Hong Oolong is a hybrid name to represent the hybrid processing methods which are involved in making this tea. The first half of the processing methods are oolong tea making, as if you were going to make a partially oxidized tea, up into a certain step. And the most significant, unique thing about Hong Oolong is that they roll it partially before the leaves are put into the tumble heaters. That's the specific thing about Hong Oolong. So they're tearing the leaves slightly, allowing the sap to be exposed to air. That creates a lot more oxidation than would ever happen if they weren't rolled before the tumble heating. And then the post-production, or I should say the second half, is basically along the lines of black tea making. The difference being that Hong Oolong is rolled, even though it's been rolled to the point of tearing, it's rolled as a semi-spherical or a ball-shaped oolong tea, like most of our oolongs are in Taiwan. So I'll quickly jump into the visual of the dry leaves. They are quite small in the size of the leaves, but that's because they've been torn and then rolled. So it's a kind of much less spherical shape because the integrity of the leaves has been compromised somewhat by the extensive rolling in order to get it to be very close to fully oxidized. But the theory is, and the practice that follows it, is that the solar withering and the indoor withering and the tumbling and then the cease oxidation, that are all parts of oolong tea making, create a character which I can relate to and experience in drinking it, that it has an oolong aspect to it. It also has a very deep, dark, fully oxidized character as well. So there you go. It's half oolong and half black tea in this type of tea that is a recent introduction. I think it's probably 20 years ago now, actually. Started on the east coast of Taiwan in Taidong. The Tea Research and Extension Station wanted to give them a differentiating value to their produce, not needing to compete with other much more successful tea growing regions in Taiwan. So they came up with this processing method that is conducive, or at least their climate and their produce is conducive to making this type of tea. That's where it all started. It's gotten more and more popular. People are knowing it in the market. Tea heads around the world are being exposed to it and enjoying it. And so we wanted to share what we believe is a special batch because it comes from a higher elevation. It's from an older generation oolong tea garden. Qing Xin Oolong is the leaf material, made by Lugu farmers in the first half of the production, and then by this specialty black tea maker, Mr. Lee, that we'll be working with on an ongoing basis in the future. So we like his innovative mind and his practice, and he has a really cool self-built factory that is somewhat of a replica of the Japanese wooden structures that were built here over 100 years ago in the Sun Moon Lake area, which he firmly believes is conducive to black tea making. It's not this big cement block. It has much more ventilation. The air circulation is good in it. We were impressed by it and liked it. That was one of the reasons why we decided to start working with him on an ongoing basis. So I'm really thirsty at this point. Let's see what this Hong Oolong has got. Yeah, the oolong character I think is a common consensus, and what I experience right now in this moment is the finish. It's this dry, kind of bright, vibrant, complex finish that is more interesting, basically, than even small leaf black tea. Black tea that is made from the type of tea strains that are normally made to make oolong. So there is something distinct in those that hybrid processing method that gives you an oolong experience. It just hits the back of your palate and it has zing to it. It's something like it reminds you of a heavily oxidized oolong tea. The notes I got when brewing it, or as I have brewed it several times, is all cooled down now, but it's very berry-like, or cherries, or stone fruits, plums, pluots, those kind of things that are kind of rich and dense, but also have an astringent quality. And there's more richness to it, something like something syrupy, maybe molasses, a rich kind of syrupy pipe tobacco smell, that really kind of pungent, strong character, something more than fruit, and fruit wood, maybe not, I won't go smoky, it's not smoky, but there's something deeper and denser in there. I used what I'm kind of warming up to again after a while of not really paying much attention to this teapot. It's about 150 milliliters. It's a very thin-walled teapot. It's well made, good quality. And I put 10 grams of tea leaves in, used boiling temperature water for, I didn't rinse the leaves. I did it like black tea because these leaves really open up quickly and I wanted to get that first hit. So 1 minute the first brew, 50 seconds the second brew, back to 1 minute on the third brew, 1 minute 10 on the fourth brew, and about 120 on the fifth brew. Actually, there's 2 brews in here, so 120 and 130. I guess I kept increasing 10 seconds after the third brew. Go to the second. There's something mead-like, ale, something kind of fermented and tangy. Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Fermented and tangy. Fruit compote, something stronger and deeper and thicker than fresh fruit. And there's a little bit of smoky plum almost. That's preserved plums are really common here, especially in Nantou County. They grow a lot of plums here. So a good amount of them get preserved. And they do it in various flavors that are interesting. And it's more like, it's dried and sometimes with like a confectionate sugar on the coated. But a lot of them are savory and a variety of flavors. I won't even go into that. But somehow it reminds me of dried plums, and there is a smoky plum flavor that is popular here. It's definitely lighter, more complex, and I would say more refined than most black tea, but it has a base of black tea flavor. I'm going to go with the combo of 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this cup. Yeah, it has that caramelly kind of quality, especially in small leaf black tea. But it's not as, well, it's just more interesting than most small leaf black tea because it has this vibrant character too, a little bit of zing in the finish. The maker of this tea, Mr. Lee, really is of the strong conviction that using the higher elevation leaf material that has been left to grow naturally has had to have immune system reactions to the pests, gives a more substantial raw material to work with, and the flavor profile that comes out of these leaves that have grown more or less naturally, at least without the help of fertilizers and pesticides, have something more to offer in their profile as a brewed tea, more substance basically. Let's go for the last couple of brews that went for a little longer. I want to see how this has stood up or endured. It's a little thinner, but it's more zingy, a little slightly more astringent, but more complex as a result. It's kind of like not so much legs there and that sweet base quality, and a more refined, like a drier wine, actually. The first few brews are a really nice balance. It's a nice mouthfeel. If you're into stone fruit kind of notes, like I said, plums, cherries, it's hard to, those are the things I think about when I'm tasting it. And then something deeper, a little bit of tarry, molasses kind of factor in there. I actually like the later brews. It lifts out that kind of complexity more. And I didn't do what I have often done in the past, which is let it sit for too long and compromise it. So I just added 10 seconds per brew. I think this would be 5th and 6th brews. And so it's not deadened by being overly brewed. Yeah, so I'd say 6 brews easily, and you can enjoy the progression of it kind of fading in its substance, but kind of livening up in its lighter, more delicate complexity in the later brews. Enjoy your Hong Oolong as we enter into spring, late spring, summer months. We'll see what we have to bring as the spring harvest shows its true colors in the next couple months. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.